investments lined up. We're going to test drive this new Minister of Finance decree. We'll let you know how it goes, but I think so far I'm optimistic. I think it's gonna go. It's really gonna go, right? Now the next step is to give more, right? To make more sectors eligible for this tax holiday. Right now it's very concentrated in industry and manufacturing, but like I said, why not extend it to service sectors like universities, vocational training, or for example, airline MRO. Big job creator, very labor-intensive industry, maintenance, repair, overhaul of aircraft, and so on. Tourism, right? Like if Manado is bursting at the seams, somebody wants to invest $1 billion, I would give it like 50-year tax holiday, you know, especially if they put up the money sooner rather than later, right? It's a kind of a competitive world these days to attract investment dollars. So other things that are still in the works, we're gonna once again revise our so-called negative list to open up more sectors. So the opening up of the university sector will be part of that. Will be part of the revision of the negative list where we will open up, and there'll be other sectors, you know, from say maximum 51, we'll go to maximum 67, or from maximum 51, we'll go to maximum 100 foreign ownership allowed. So, broadly speaking, I'm fairly optimistic. If you Google my remarks or my speeches and my press interviews last year, I was very frustrated, to be honest. At cabinet meeting after cabinet meeting, I reminded the president, vice president, my colleagues, last year we were in danger of losing reform momentum, right? I was getting quite frustrated, and you can check, actually my co-members, right? But to my surprise, the second cabinet meeting of the year was January 5, and President Jokowi chose for the agenda of that meeting, investment, right? And since then, I think we've had a cabinet meeting every single week on investment, right? So I'm very happy. Again, 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward. But I think we're recovering a lot of the reform momentum that, honestly speaking, I feel last year we kind of lost. Right? Number 2, I feel good because, to my surprise, I just realized actually election year is a pretty good year for reform, or it can be a pretty good year for reform, right? And I'll share with you a little secret. I spoke with President Jokowi on the plane ride, on his plane going down to Sydney. And first of all, I asked him for permission to not campaign for him, right? Because I don't think I add much value on the campaign trail. I'm not exactly a vote magnet or an electoral asset, right? I think I can add more value by staying where I am and maintaining economic reform momentum and staying focused on managing the economy, right? And actually, I said to the president, half jokingly, you know, Bapak President, actually while everyone's busy campaigning and while all the attention is on the campaign issues, that could be a really good time to quietly, discreetly sneak in a lot of reforms without anyone noticing, right? Now, obviously, this is not a good time for reforms that require Parliament, because Parliament will be campaigning. You know, they won't be in their office working on legislation. They'll be busy campaigning and fundraising, and, you know. But there's, you know, after 3 years in the cabinet, I've identified so many reforms that we would be able to do just within the context of the executive branch. So there's so many reforms and so many improvements to our inefficient procedures, the inefficient ways that we work in the bureaucracy, that we can improve fully within the authority of the president and the executive branch, right? So I think election years is like a great time to do those kinds of reforms. As soon as the election is over, then we can refocus on reforms that require Parliament, because guess what? We'll have a new Parliament. They'll be eager to get to work. They'll be eager to show that that they're productive and churning out new legislation, right? Then we can focus again on reforms that require parliament, right? But the second thing that I asked or suggested to President Jokowi is, during that campaign, let me sit down with a small number of colleagues and start working on the second term agenda, right? So as soon as the Electoral Commission has certified, right? And obviously, I think it's best for business and the economy if there's continuity with President Jokowi getting a second term. As soon as election is behind us, we can then hit the ground running. Right? We already know, the first thing is this, the second thing is this, the third thing is this, right? Because the last thing you want to do is win the second term and waste the first 6 months figuring out what to do with it, right? So again, I think I feel good because I feel we have a work plan, right? We have a coherent and tactical and strategic work plan, and I think we're recovering reform momentum. So just a few highlights to give you a flavor, I think, for how our economy is developing at the moment, and what's driving what, and what we're doing in the government.
Thank you, Pak Tom. I hear keywords a few times, second terms. So we can bring that to the bank now. But this is a major piece that your accomplishment, Pak, the PMK 35. PMK is a Ministerial Finance Decree. I'm a businessman myself. In the past, you have to go through a maze, wandering, W-O-W-A. Today, actually, Pak Tom office can issue a paper to give you a tax holiday. And it takes only 5 days in the new flow chart. It's like Indonesian say, angin surga. It's such good news. I hear a lot of good feedback about this PMK 35. If I may, but we have a lot of questions here, but because of time, if I may allude to Trade Expo Indonesia October 2017, in which I was receiving our colleagues from Malaysia here, and then I discovered one thing, but a lot of businesses in Malaysia, they don't really understand our current situation, that we have achieved such a reform, and just a huge amount of opportunities. Of course, there are some hiccup here and challenges. Businesses, of course, have challenges. So, and there are a lot of questions here. Maybe I'll pick up a few back for you to give answers.
You can also put the questions on screen, actually, right?
Yeah. Is the Slido question on the screen? It's only here, but
go ahead.
I read to you back. Yeah. I want to know about fiscal Indonesia. Where could I find this information? I think they want to know the fiscal information and data, right? I think it mostly now Indonesia is very open. The Minister of Finance, BKPM, there's a lot of data there you can download. Yeah. This is the question in the fiscal. See, the question is very basic, but how to establish company in Indonesia and all this area? Maybe you can enlighten us.
Okay.
On the new mode right now.
Well, that top question is getting 12 likes, so I guess I'll answer that first. That's the nice thing about the system. It can rank by popularity. So how do I establish a company in Indonesia? So actually, very easy, especially for foreign investors. Your first port of call definitely is BKPM, right? So all international investment has to start with a registration at the Investment Coordinating Board at BKPM, my agency. So it's in Jakarta, right, smack downtown, near the stock exchange. And you can find us on the web. And actually, establishing a company as a foreign investor used to take like 7 months, which is crazy, right? So actually, one of the first visits President Jokowi made, I think 4 days after he was sworn in, he popped in unannounced into BKPM on his way to the hospital to visit former President Habibie, right? And one of the first things he did was to focus on that BKPM foreign investor registration process. And now basically, we have we get it down to 3 hours. So literally, from start to finish, you get like 11 permits, including your deed of establishment, right? Your article of association deed of establishment. One of the breakthroughs is the president ordered BKPM. This was before my time, by the way. I was not yet in the cabinet even. But he ordered BKPM to put several notaries inside BKPM office, right? Because so that investors didn't have to leave the building to go to a notary's office to process that and then come back again, right? He ordered the notaries to open their office in BKPM, right? So, what previously can take as long as 7 months, now supposed to take 3 hours, right? Wow. So that's number one.
This is actually a major achievement. 20 years ago, when I applied companies, it took me 3 years. I'm not exaggerating.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because once you have that registration, you still have to go through various other permits and licenses, right? So if it takes you 7 months or even 3 years to get to the starting line, that's absolutely
incorporated
insane,
companies,
right? So now, definitely, and we used to call it in principle license.
Yes.
Now we call it registration. Because that's all it is, And frankly, to be very blunt, there used to be a bunch of corruption around it as well, right? Sometimes you had to pay certain agents, right, to get what is basically just a registration, right? It's crazy. But anyway, now that's fixed, and we're moving on to the rest of the permits from the line ministries, like the energy ministry, the industry ministry, the tourism ministry. So those permits will get chopped down.
Those 3 hours, you will sit in a nice room with a TV, with a coffee,
with free cappuccino. Yeah.
So you will not be bored. 3 hours pass very fast. You get your 8 licenses within 3 hours. That's amazing to be a band.
Again, it's not me.
Yeah.
It was started by President Jokowi under the then actually still previous chairman and then the next chairman, and of course, continuing under me, but yeah, that was a good one. Okay, sorry.
The second,
yeah.
What sector to be recommended?
My answer actually is, look, I've given you a flavor for which sectors are driving the economy, right? But when it comes down to you as an individual, right, or you as a company, I believe 2 principles prevail. Number one, of course, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be pedantic, or patronizing, but I think, the principle of stick to what you know, or stick to what you know, right? Seems to me to just make sense over the years, right? Like what you know, what you're good at, what you have a passion for, just stick with that, right? That's number one. Number two, I really believe, and again, I don't know how far it's true for other countries, but I really believe the bigger question is not what, but who, right? I think finding good local partners, whether it's finding a set of good local customers or finding a good set of local suppliers, finding a good landlord. And so much of that is driven by chemistry, right? So I think, sorry to share with you a little anecdote. After President Jokowi moved me from Minister of Trade to Chairman of BKPM, he invited me for lunch at the palace, and then we had lunch. Right? And he asked me this question, Pak Tom, why do investors actually invest in Indonesia? Why do they actually invest? I said, well, Pak Presiden, I guess I'll skip all the things that you already know, right? About incentives and the attractiveness of the country to invest. It's a big market, and so we already know all that. But let me share with you a different perspective. Try to imagine that you're a successful businessman. Say from China. You're in your 50s. You're successful, you're rich, right? You don't have to do anything. You can just enjoy being a successful businessman. But now you're thinking you want to branch out. You know, where do I go? You know, you start traveling, you go to Vietnam, you go to Philippines, you go to Thailand. The point is, about President, I think people invest where they like it. People invest where they just love it. They just like being there. They like the people, they like the place. You know, when you're already successful, you know, you're looking for happiness and fulfillment, right? Like you're looking for, you know, for a nice thing. You know, well, I mean, there's people who are just greedy, right? They just want to, you know, they don't mind like a lot of pain and suffering. They just want to make money, right? But I think increasingly, and especially with the next generation, people want to have fun. You know, people want to enjoy doing business, right? So I would not underestimate, I said to Pak President, I would not underestimate the role of chemistry and lifestyle, right? And I think people oftentimes come to Indonesia and they fall in love. They just love the place. You know, I think we're one of the most likable people in the world, right? It's one of the most pleasant places,
We have
right?
one of the highest happiness index.
Yeah. We're probably a bit too happy. Especially our school children are among the happiest, you know, in the world. I'm not sure that's a good thing. I think our school children should be a bit more stressed out and anxious, but they're very happy. Too happy. But yeah, so look, you know, I think, you know, sorry, that was a big digression from the question. What sector? I would say what you're good at, what you love. Number two, find an ecosystem of customers, suppliers, partners that you like, right? That you enjoy doing business with. And again, I think there's agencies like BKPM, there's chambers of commerce, there's Malaysia, Indonesia, business associations, and so on, and networking, and so on. You know, it does happen, and that's I think that's the right way to go. Sorry.
Thank you. The last question is how is the infrastructures in the archipelago?
Right. So I think the marquee policy of the Jokowi Yusuf Kala administration of 2014-2019 really is infrastructure. Yeah. So frankly, before 2014, I would say the state of our infrastructure is appalling. It's horrible, right? Now, the pendulum might have swung to the other extreme. We now have an almost excessive focus on infrastructure, and it's busting our budgets and you know, bloating our state enterprises balance sheets because we're building so much airports and toll roads and rail and whatever, right? Getting a bit overheated, but I think the trend is strongly towards building better and better infrastructure. Like I said, rail traffic last year was up 22 or 23% year on year, right? Airline traffic is growing, telecoms data traffic is growing, so electricity is still a bit lagging, to be honest. But now the other thing that I'm very thankful, I was the cabinet member last year who came begging to President Jokowi, urging him to attend the One Belt, One Road Summit in Beijing in May of last year, even though that meant that he would go to China 2 times in 2 weeks. And that was after the, sorry to say, somewhat anti-Chinese governor election in Jakarta that had just happened, right? And again, I think it speaks volumes to President Jokowi's political courage that he just brushes that aside and said, look, if that's the right thing to do for the country, who cares about the politics? I'm just going to do it, right? So he went to Beijing. We had a fantastic bilateral with President Xi Jinping. I was just in Beijing last week with Korean Minister Luhut. We met with Premier Li Keqiang, spent 2.5 hours with Foreign Minister Wang Yi, spent 1.5 hours with NDRC, National Development Reform Committee Chairman He Li-feng. And I think the Belt and Road Corporation in Indonesia is really going to pick up this year. And it's all focused on infrastructure. Yeah. So airports, hydropower, seaports, tourism, infrastructure. So I think this is going to be a big theme going forward.
This is a lot of big projects. Because of time,
Sorry.
Any last question from floor? Any? If not, with that, I'd like to thank Pak Dom because of time and all of you. And we thank him and appreciate the accomplishment. He's key person in the economic team in Indonesia. By the way, Indonesian macroeconomic condition, we've been entering into low age of low inflation, about 3% something. Never happened before, last 30 years. So this economic team is very, very good. And our fiscal policy is very, very good. There's a lot of good people in the economic team. He's one of the men here. So thank you, Pak Tom, for coming here, sharing with us. Please thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency Bapak Thomas Lembong and Bapak Michael Gautama. Please remain on stage. Please remain on stage.